my name is Kevin Cadet. I'm the Executive Director of Black Angels Miami. And I'm really happy to be joined by Auston Bunsen. And we're going to be talking about blockchain and the technology beyond the hype and all the opportunities and what's happening out there in the marketplace. So just to start, this is a Black Angels Talk event held by Black Angels Miami. And Black Angels Miami is a nonprofit that is trying to add more diversity to the angel investing space. So introduce people of color who are accredited to angel investing, giving them an on-ramp to be exposed to great opportunities, and also bring give a great platform for founders of color to share the great work that's going on, and hopefully we can make connections and make investments happen. So Auston, I could talk about your background, but you could do it so much better. And while you're introducing yourself, because when we first met, I don't believe you were in this space as deeply as you are now, or you are just stealth. I think you're just stealth. But as you talk about your story, tell us how you came to be where you are right now, working in blockchain.
Sure. Yeah, I'll give a brief background as well on myself. So I'm a self-taught engineer from Broward, Florida. Have spent the last 13 years in Miami. I came down here because I was recruited to be the CTO of a company called OneSale.com. We were a very popular daily deals site. I helped grow that company's revenue from about 80 million a year to 160 million a year. And then the daily deals space sort of imploded. And with it, we had to cut a bunch of people and downsize and find another sort of business model that worked. So I stayed on through that transition and then left and took some time off. I've been working in various software positions pretty much my entire adult life. I actually learned how to write software because I met a girl on MySpace and we started dating. And when I met her father, he was like, listen, you're pretty smart, not that ambitious. You should actually learn how to write software. You should come live with me in Germany. I'll let you stay with me, live with me. And once you know enough, I'll give you a job. So I had already dropped out of college at that point, but I moved to Germany from Broward, and I lived there for about 8 months. I learned how to write software. He gave me a job where I actually wrote software for a megacorp in Germany. And then I came back because it was really cold there. It's very, very cold in Germany. So yeah, I think probably the coolest stuff that I've done as a software engineer sort of involve working at USA Today at one point, First Round Capital at another. I've worked with a payments company and grew a mobile app there to $1 million a month in process volume. And then how I got into crypto was there was a meetup in, I think it was 2011 in Broward called Hack and Tell. And I went to this meetup and someone was presenting Bitcoin. So they literally, they took a old computer and they're like, this is my Bitcoin mining rig. It's digital money and it's unstoppable. And I was like, that's a scam. And so at that point, I didn't really think anything of it. My friend that showed me the Bitcoin, he did some freelance work for me, and he's like, you know what, just let me use your servers to mine Bitcoin and we'll call it even. And so that was fine. But eventually I started learning more about Bitcoin, and then I had 2 roommates officially at one point in my life, and one of those roommates unofficially had a few other roommates. And one of those other roommates was the CTO of a company called Bitstop, and he was just always like sleeping at my house, or rather my apartment. And he was buying Bitcoin, or he was buying pizzas with Bitcoin, and like living his life basically entirely on Bitcoin, and just transitioning to fiat whenever. And that got me more into Bitcoin. I learned a lot more about how it worked. And then at one point I sold my TV. I had like a 60-inch TV that I sold to them when I moved out with my then girlfriend, now wife. And I sold it to them for 2.5 Bitcoin. So that's $150,000 TV as of right now. But then in 2017, I learned a little bit more about Ethereum / blockchain. A friend of mine sent me a write-up of Ethereum, and I was like, oh, this is crazy. It's like Bitcoin, but you can program it. This is like very interesting. So I immediately bought some and I started tinkering with it, learned a little bit more. And then eventually there was this mass hysteria, and people were asking me like, oh, how do I buy these things? They're going up in price. How do I buy them? And so I started a company with 2 of my coworkers back then called C Blocks. We would take 5 random cryptocurrencies from the top 100, load them up on a USB stick, and send it to you. That went relatively well the first 45 days. I think we did about 45,000 in revenue. And then we just sort of got locked out of the payment rails from Stripe and PayPal and everybody. We had to like open an office in Canada and do all sorts of crazy stuff just to like survive. By the time we relaunched, the crypto winter had hit and we couldn't hack it. We pivoted into building a wallet, a mobile wallet that like would let you send crypto and GIFs at the same time. Couldn't get good retention on that product. And then I ended up going back into the workforce, ended up at USA Today, then first round. And throughout that process, my co-founders on this business actually ended up recruiting me. They're like, oh, you should join. And they've been doing this like a lot since 2017. You should join. We really need you. This is great. It's going to be awesome. You don't know. You should do it. And I had worked with them on previous projects as a freelancer, but I ended up agreeing, and we ended up rebuilding the product that they had built with a freelancer. And then we relaunched that in February of 2020. And it's basically been growing 20 to 30% month over month ever since then. We applied to Y Combinator in summer of 20. We didn't get in. And then, we just kept growing. We applied again in November and we got in. And then I told First Round that, hey, I gotta go. And that was that. We've just been growing like insane amounts ever since then. Yeah.
Wow. I did not know. The genesis of, yeah, that's a wild story, but that's great. So we're talking to the right person. So, the genesis for this talk is really, we talk about cryptocurrency, we talk about Bitcoin. The hype is out there, but people are going to buy Bitcoin. People are going to buy things with Bitcoin, transfer Bitcoin, what have you. But that is just one small part of blockchain and what's happening in the marketplace. And when people buy Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies, they're not really they're not getting any exposure to underlying technology. And all of these transactions and these platforms and these protocols are working on technology or based on technology. And I'm turning into a ghost right now. So can you talk first about, your company right now is Web 3.0. So let's talk about what you're doing right now and how that relates to Web 3.0. And then and let's talk about what Web 3.0 is, because I think most people don't really understand what it is.
Sure, yeah. Okay, so very quickly, I'll just go over what my company does, and then we'll talk a bit about Web3. So can you see this?
Can.
Perfect. So this is my company, QuickNode. What we do is we provide blockchain infrastructure to companies that are building Web3 enabled products. So companies like PayPal, Coinbase, Atari, Zedrun, PancakeSwap, DappRadar, et cetera, et cetera. We provide essentially access to read and write to the blockchain in a very, very fast manner. So we have a number of things that make our platform better or faster to use than anyone else, and that includes, globally co-locating our infrastructure and being multi-cloud. So we're in like 14 data centers across every major continent. So we're in like Singapore, Hong Kong, Bangalore, Amsterdam, Frankfurt, London, Virginia, New York, Ohio, San Francisco. And so, if you're running some Web3 enabled app and you need access to a chain anywhere near any of those nodes, we're able to provide a response very quickly. We provide this access on multiple plans, right? So the entry level plan is $9 and enterprise starts at $2,000 a month. Let's see, we're backed by some of the best investors in the world. So some of them are actually here on this channel. Lightspeed, Tribe Capital, Summit Capital, Crossbeam, Combinator, SoftBank, 776, which is Alexis Ohanian's fund, and a bunch of really, really great angel investors. Team is currently 21. We're still growing an insanely fast amount. And yeah, so that's it for the company. Now, stepping aside and talking about Web3, the easiest way to think about Web3, in my opinion, is with Web2, you don't really control your data or your identity or the algorithms that power those things. With Web3, you can own all of those things. So what does that mean? Let's just pick one and dive in, right? So let's start with the easiest one, which is the promise of Web3, which is like some set of programming or code that powers the application you're using is in some data center somewhere with a Web2 situation, right? So like, let's just say an Uber ride, right? So like all that information about your rides and all that stuff, like the code that powers that experience, it's in closed sourced code that you can't see, you can't manipulate, you can't use whenever you want. Not necessarily, not without the permission of Uber. And they can cut off access to it anytime. With Web3, you can run your own node if you want, or you could pay us, whatever you want. Either one is fine.
What is a node?
A node is a copy of the blockchain. So with Web3, you can actually run your own node, and it will synchronize a copy of that source code I was just talking about that powers your Uber rides. And you can use that whenever you want. No one can ever stop you from doing that. So if there's a driver and Uber wants to let you actually ride, that's how it works today. But with Web3, you run the actual computer that runs the algorithm for matching you with a driver. So you can do it anytime you want. And anyone that has a copy of the blockchain can also do this, right? So there's localities where Uber is actually banned, right? So like Singapore, for instance, if someone actually built Uber on the Ethereum blockchain, and then someone built an interface for using Uber on the Ethereum blockchain, that would 100% be censorship resistant. It would be very hard for the Singaporean government, or governments of Singapore rather, to actually stop that from happening. And this applies to, pretty much all applications that you can write on Web3. So that's like one of the three sort of tenets, right? I said it was algorithm, data, and identity. So the next part is identity. So when you think about signing up for some service, right? You usually have to give them an email, a phone number, maybe a social security, maybe like some other stuff. With Web3, you can actually just be reduced to a number, right? So I can actually have this little wallet, and I have unlimited identities, right? I'll just create another one. So now I have a new one, right? And this could be anybody. I could, buy some NFTs here or not. I could exchange funds, whatever it is that I want to do. And this is a completely new identity that has actually never been used before. I can actually just paste this here, and you'll see there's 0 Ether, no activity. This is brand new, and I did that. And I can actually log into websites with this and just sign up, and they don't need to know anything about me, right? I just click this, click accept, and there we go. I've logged into this website, right? And they don't need to know who I am, what my age is, my name, any of that.
So literally the name you put to that identity is just for you to reference that number.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And so, with Web3, you have full control of your identity. If you want to log into one website as, 0672 and then another website as 0x91, you can completely do that. And that has a lot of power, right? On top of that sort of identity layer it's all underlined by private public key technology. And that actually allows you to do things like sign messages. So no one can ever forge your identity, right? So some message will be digitally signed by me, and you won't be able to replicate that signature because I have the private key that signed that message. And then what else is there? And then we talked about data, right? So since you have control of your identity, you can actually control what data about you is where, right? So that website that I use, Foundation, let's say they were storing all the actions that I took with my BAM identity. That would be fine because I could just spin up a new one, and then I can use them again if I want, or do whatever I want. And so that's sort of the premise of Web3. With Web2, you don't really own things, you just sort of use them. With Web3, you're more empowered to own and control how you go about using the internet.
So what I find interesting personally is the application. So there's two things that are going to happen, right? The applications are going to be built based on this technology, right? And those entities or companies which are doing that are opportunities to invest in. But then there are infrastructure-based entities which, like you out there, that are doing things to enable the technology, right? Which, unless you are directly introduced to, they're behind the scenes. You have no reason to ever hear about it but yet they're continuously making money, right? So regardless of whether Bitcoin quadruples tomorrow or goes down, 50%, underlying technology out there is going to continue to make money.
Yeah, this is a pretty interesting website, to your point, right? So there's infrastructure that sits on top of us, and then there's infrastructure that sits next to us, and there's infrastructure that cuts across. And you can see like how much money these projects are actually making. So maybe some of you have heard of Uniswap. It's a decentralized exchange, and that allows you to actually exchange cryptocurrency without anyone's permission. It's that same Uber model that I told you, but instead of matching a rider and a driver, it's matching someone that wants to sell ETH with someone that wants to buy ETH, or someone that wants to buy DAI with someone that wants to sell ETH. And so you can see right here, Uniswap is making roughly 3.5 million in the last 24 hours, or on average 4.1 million in fees. So that comes out to about $1.5 billion in revenue for this protocol. And this is just
that's a protocol, right? So that isn't necessarily that's not a big company with a lot of distributed architecture across the world. That's a protocol which someone wrote.
Yes, exactly. But since it's essentially like an app that sits on the blockchain,
right? And
anyone can integrate with it, right? So for instance, I showed you their official user interface, right? It's at app.uniswap.org, but there exist other interfaces to that same exact API/protocol, right? Like this is a app called Rainbow. If you tap this little circle with the squiggly exchange button looking thing, that is actually going to bring up a user interface for you to do an exchange right from your mobile phone. But yeah. So to your point, yes, there's a lot of money being made, right? So here's one of my favorite projects, Tornado Cash. So Tornado Cash is an anonymity set, which allows you to mix your funds with others for the purpose of maintaining your privacy. And so, I can deposit money into this pool and I can withdraw it whenever I want. And I get anonymity by doing so. I get the funds, essentially, we'll call them privatized, we'll say, by using that. And you can see right here that they're making about $14,000 a day, which, is about 5 million a year.
Right. Yeah. And how I feel right now is how I feel every time I talk to someone about this space, because I learned something new, and I'm just like, how much don't I know every single time I have this conversation? So, all right, we have all for the audience and for all of us, is there a framework to think about all of these different players? Now you said there's technology going across, there's technology this is sitting on, I think we all talk about the cryptocurrencies, but let's talk about the technology, because just as your company, right, there's companies out there raising capital, there's companies that reach out to us, their pitch decks, as we get opportunities all the time. But beyond looking at an individual pitch deck, how should people orient themselves? Because this space is also evolving all the time. So you got NFTs, and go on and on and on. All right. So you just took us down a rabbit hole really quickly. But is there trying to give, if we can, leave this conversation with people having context and wanting to learn more about different areas and give them direction, because obviously we're not going to get through it all, and we're already at 5:30 and we haven't really opened up for questions yet. Can we spend the next 15 minutes just giving people the lay of the land? I think people understand about, you know, some of the advantages of blockchain, but practically, you know, the apps we're using it, and some of the context for the landscape. Make sense? Or is that,
Yeah.
or that's not easy to do because it's moving at 1,000,000 miles per hour?
I mean, it's not easy to do, but I can at least talk about it a little bit, right? So when it comes to sort of cryptocurrency / blockchain, right? You probably don't, you know, again, this is not financial advice, but you probably want to think about something that has functionality, right? So when you think about something like Bitcoin or Litecoin or Dogecoin, right? Like you're just sending some amount of value to some place and able to receive it. And that's very, very powerful, especially if you're a disenfranchised person in a country like Venezuela or Zimbabwe or whatever, right? So we'll take that and say it's very powerful, you know, not relevant to what we're talking about today. You want something that has general computation power. So that would be something like Solana, perhaps Algorand, Polygon, CeeLo, Phantom, XDAI, or the original innovator in this space, Ethereum, right? And the Ethereum technology actually underlies a lot of those names that I just spit out. But yeah, you know, that's the primary thing. You want something that allows you to build on things, right? So an analogy that I think will help some people is you can think of Bitcoin as gold. It's like a way to like take some value and like store it.
An asset. It's an asset class.
Sure, but if you think about Ethereum or pretty much any of these other general computation sort of blockchains, think of them as oil. They are the lubricant that makes an economy run. They make cars move. They make plastic items that people consume, right? Ethereum is the oil of blockchain, right? It's used to create additional things and make things happen. So I hope that's good enough.
Yeah, so that's a good segue. So Ethereum, so much is built on it. Can you talk to what makes Ethereum tick? Like, why is Ethereum the thing that people say, oh, Web 3.0, you know, the future of all apps is Ethereum, everything's being built on Ethereum. You know, as you said, Bitcoin may be the goal, but Ethereum, you know, makes Web 3.0 turn. So what is Ethereum for everybody?
Ethereum is a general computation blockchain, which means that you can write applications on it, right? So those applications that I showed you, like Tornado Cash, for instance, or Uniswap, those are actual literal apps that they just live on Ethereum. They were written in a programming language called Solidity or Viper, and compiled into some code, and it's just there, right? And anyone can now run it whenever they want because it's on the blockchain, it's public, et cetera, et cetera. It's unstoppable, actually. And so that's why sometimes you hear about these hacks. And that's because once some code is on the blockchain, it's like kind of hard to change it. It's like immutable most of the time. Unchangeable is another word for immutable. And so, yeah, Ethereum just allows you to create some app that any developer anywhere can interface with at any time they want without your permission.
So for those developers out there creating apps, how do they typically make money?
I mean, there's any number of ways that you can make money, right? So if you think about Uniswap, for instance, they're charging a fee for moving that money around between all of the parties involved in a trade.
And that is built into the code of the app, which is sitting on Ethereum. So as that app is being used, they're literally ciphering off a little transaction fee.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Now, is that typical for apps? Because people use the apps, people transfer money, but no one's really thinking about that transaction fee, or they don't. Or it's so small that, you know.
I mean, not lately. The transaction fees for doing things have gone up quite a bit lately. But I'll point back to some other models, right? So this is Foundation. Foundation is an NFT marketplace, and they collect a small fee for transacting on their platform. Here's Compound. Compound creates borrowing and lending markets, rather. And whenever you borrow or lend, they take some difference, right? So you can see if you were to supply, to lend money, you would get 5.9% on it. But if you were to borrow, you would be paying 7.8%. So there's a difference here that Compound will take at least some portion of.
And who is actually who's when you borrow money on this platform, who's actually supplying the money?
With Compound, it's a collateralized instrument. So you actually have to put up money in order to get money. But you're going to borrow from someone else that also put up money, essentially. And then if the value of your collateral falls below like 67% of your position, you can get liquidated. It's kind of scary if you know what it means to get liquidated. Because essentially your whole collateral is up for grabs to disappear if you don't pick the right collateral. Here's another one. This is the Ethereum name service. So like, let's say you wanted to get, the equivalent of a domain name, you would actually have to perfect. So I could just buy this, right? And this is going to make money on a registration fee for me, right? So I register your Ethereum name for 10 years. I'm going to have to pay roughly $271 for that.
And that naming service, that's just something somebody built up, right? So you could have 3 different versions of this, or unlimited number of different naming services, which really doesn't necessarily mean anything, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're very correct on that. However, this one has the blessing of the Ethereum Foundation. So that doesn't make it any technically better than the other ones necessarily. But it does mean that we've all sort of coalesced that this is the registry.
Right.
Here's an interesting one. So this is a lossless lottery. So you put money into a pool. That pool then goes out and earns yield some way, right? Maybe through Compound or some other way. And then the yield is put up into a lottery. So let's say, we put $10 million in collectively, and we then put that money to work, and that money yields us let's just say $1,000 over the next week. One of us is going to walk away with that 1,000. Everyone else is going to walk away with their original principal. So nobody loses any money, but somebody wins more. And so they take some of the earnings that you get from that pool. Let's see. I don't know how this one makes money. And then this one is an interesting one. This is digital horse racing. So these horses, you can actually breed them, you can actually race them, and you win money by doing that. So there's people that are earning hundreds of thousands of dollars per week just by, working on this. And as you can see, this company, Zed, actually makes money by partnerships. You can see there's a NASCAR track that these horses are racing on right now. So I hope that answers your question of how these things can make money.
Yeah, that and more. Yeah, as I said, I keep getting exposed to more crazy ways, you know, but they're making real money, left, right, and center. Um, let's let's take some questions. Because I've
Right?
got plenty of my own, but I want to see. We've gone through a lot, so let's see.
I see one in the chat. It's does blockchain allow you to go around the Chinese censorship wall? Could it be used to empower employees that are censored in companies? So I'll show you this this project that I saw last summer. I wonder if I could find it.
And while you're looking
Police
for that, can we
accountability
put
on the
all of our
blockchain.
questions into the Q&A as opposed to chat, just so it's a little easier for us all to track it? So there's a Q&A button there, but we'll get through the chats. But let's start using the Q&A.
So here's this is like an interesting sort of idea to that point, which is like this is a blockchain police brutality database that gives bad cops nowhere to hide. It's essentially some thing on the blockchain that allows people to report, police behavior and not worry about, getting retaliated against or anything like that. Yeah, and apparently there's a study here. Police chain. Oh, that's interesting. But yeah, so to answer the questions very directly, yeah, it can be used to get around censorship. Most blockchains are censorship resistant. The degree to which they are censorship resistant depends on how many copies of that blockchain exist in the world at any given moment.
All right. Gregory John, what do you think about private blockchain in enterprise like Amazon Quantum Ledger Database?
I personally think that private blockchains are not a worthy endeavor for the most part, right? Like if I'm using a private blockchain, I should just use a database for the most part, because like I'm the one that's providing all the compute power. So who says that I can't change it anyway? If we're talking about a semi-private, like a sort of quorum of companies working together, right? Like let's say, so like all freight forwarders in South America, right? Like maybe there's something to be had there. Each freight forwarder contributes some amount of computing power to secure the chain, and that's like significantly better than pure private. But I'm very much a big fan of public blockchains, just generally.
And what do you think about DLT outside of blockchain like IOTA?
I don't have enough information on IOTA to speak about it intelligently, so I'll skip that question.
Okay. All right, to Q&A. How can an angel get access to invest in these companies?
Damn, that is a that's a tough one. There's a term in crypto called aping in. It's when you do no research and invest immediately. And that is quite honestly the easiest / fastest way, right? So I have invested in a few companies in the space, and the only way I'm actually able to get in is if I make a decision in like less than 24 hours most of the time. I guess the other thing I would say is like be active on Twitter, Discord, Telegram, like watch for things, right? That there's a whole lot of crazy things happening, and yeah.
All right. It's a long question here in the Q&A.
It's captivating to see who's making all kinds of money. How does a newcomer to these endeavors avoid naively dropping money down a hole as with the stock market? Well, so this is a good question. I think we'll start here. So this actually has a pretty handy chart. So if we look at the all-time of Ethereum, you'll see that, how do I move this thing? I can't move it. Oh no. All right. You'll see that, pretty much all of Ethereum is lower than the current price. So anyone that invested in Ethereum has a very high likelihood of being up, right? So no money lost, assuming they didn't just have paper hands and sell as soon as things dropped, right? That's not always true for other coins, but that's where, doing your own research sort of comes in. Let's see if we can find one. This one. Come on, there we go. So if we look at the all-time for this, you can see that, there was quite a few times. 1 second, I'm gonna just move this, it's annoying me. All right, you can see that there was like roughly, I don't know, this looks like maybe like a month or so, maybe 30 days, where the price was higher than it is now. And so, are people losing money? That depends on the people. If you're going to invest in this is a very, very long-term play that I would not recommend you put money you need in the short term or even in the medium term into. So if how do you avoid dropping money down a hole? The answer is you actually do drop money down a hole. So don't put a bunch of money in that you're not willing to lose.
But beyond the actual coins you showed there, companies which are building apps, companies such as yours is, I guess, question is, how do we find the ones which are more obscure but upcoming? And, lately I've been reading a lot of hot companies simply don't even want investment. They're making so much money quickly.
Yes, exactly. So
it's tough to get. So the ones you know about, which are doing well, it's too late. And you're saying, jump in early, but then you don't know. So this is a tough nut to crack.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I'm sort of giving you this advice from the point of view of someone that knows a lot about this, and it's to say that things are moving so fast, and it's so hard to differentiate promising from unpromising, that you just have to bite the bullet and see if it works. And most of the time when it does work in crypto, you're seeing serious like 4-digit returns.
Are investments in blockchain companies structured like traditional LLC investments, or like buying cryptocurrency? So definitely cryptocurrency, but how many are traditional? I mean, yours is traditional.
I mean, so there's basically like 3-ish models, right? There's like the token model, which is like, you just buy some token and hope it goes up, right? And that could just be for a chain. And then there's like this new sort of thing like DAOs, right? So let me see. Andreessen Horowitz, FWB. Andreessen Horowitz, you can't see it, but we'll just refresh really quick. Andreessen Horowitz invested in this company, or rather this DAO. Let's see if this one shows it. And they put $10 million into a organization that only exists on the blockchain. right? And like it's basically a Discord channel, and they do in-person events from time to time. And they gave it $100 million valuation. And so like that's this new class that I was telling you about, which is DAOs. And then there's traditional, right? So, you know, like LLC or C Corp. And so you have that whole range, that whole spectrum, and you get to choose what your risk is, right? Obviously, traditional equities have significantly more protections for investors, probably less upside. But the other stuff, right? Like FWB used to be like literally like 80 cents or something like that. And now it's like, you know, $80 or something to get one of them. And so, you know, the upside there is like crazy high, but you know, you gotta pick right.
So how do you go about doing blockchain space research? I saw that you pulled up Decrypt. Do you have a top 5 of news sources for the crypto space?
Yes, definitely. I like Decrypt a lot. I like the Block a lot. CoinDesk is pretty good. And then Twitter. Twitter is probably my number one. Just finding and following the right people there gives you a lot of edge. And then maybe TechCrunch, number 5.
Okay. What is your perspective on the future of blockchain interoperability? Technologies that allow separate blockchains to communicate.
I think there's some promising work being done there right now, right? So Polkadot is trying to build a parachain. There's also this chain called Thorchain that integrates multiple like protocols, and you can actually swap Ethereum for Bitcoin on Thorchain, or Litecoin for Ethereum, or whatever. And so, you know, that will likely happen. It's you know, relatively, you know, not impossible, right?
Super basic, but if you're starting from no knowledge, where would you go? So what resources would you use to start building your fundamental knowledge of the blockchain and any adjacent dependencies? So would it be those sources you just talked about, or?
I'm unfortunately a bottoms up learner. So the way that I learn things is I just start doing it, right? So like I would pick a wallet and download it and try to use it. And then I would try to acquire the cryptocurrency however I can. And then I would try to send it to a friend, or I would try to get a friend to send it to me. And like I would do small amounts, always like just trying to understand what's going on, how's it going. Then I would like try to buy, you know, something that I think is cool, or use an app that I think is interesting, and just go and understand more. Read white paper for the thing that I don't understand. Ask someone that I know that maybe knows a little bit more than me. And I would just scaffold up my knowledge just by like scrounging together whatever resources I can and go from there.
Does proof of stake technology have higher upside than proof of work given the concerns on energy consumption?
I mean, I can't speak too intelligently about the upside of proof of stake. There's some decent projects out there that are primarily run using proof of stake, and there has been upside in those projects. But I think, you know, Ethereum generally is moving to proof of stake, and I tend to have a decent amount of trust with the Ethereum Foundation. So proof of stake probably has some decent amount of upside.
How do you see NFTs incorporated in enterprise infrastructure?
I mean, beyond the advertising sort of thing, there's plenty to be done, right? So you can see right here, Atari is, you know, essentially buying the track here. But there's other stuff, right? So this is actually Adobe today. I mentioned this earlier, but Adobe today announced that you're going to be able to showcase your NFT artwork on Behance, and then you're going to be able to claim your artwork essentially as your own, right? So you can imagine, you can see right here, this photo was created with Adobe Photoshop by this creator and on this date. So you can have like full provenance all the way back to the creator. And that's like kind of powerful, right? Because like, let's say there's royalties to be had. In, let's say, I don't know, let's just say music, right? That can happen all on chain. I wouldn't be surprised if Spotify made some serious plays into doing this, because you could essentially reward Spotify artists by having a crap ton of people essentially crowdfund the creation of a song, or maybe not crowdfund, but maybe, you know, just some person buy the rights to a song, but then the creators get 10% royalties, right? And so there's a pretty famous group called Disclosure. They're like an electronic group, and they made this song, NFT Energy, and it's sold for like, I don't know, what is that? Some very large amount of money. I don't know what it was, but it was like hundreds of thousands of dollars that someone paid for this. And you can very easily see a future where this song now moves into Spotify and the royalties are paid out back to Disclosure, but the owner of the song also gets paid out properly. So I can see NFTs doing a whole lot, right? That's just one sort of implementation that seems to make sense for me, but it could go for photography, it could go for anything really.
What are the typical valuations of pre-revenue blockchain companies?
That's a hilarious question. There's no such thing as a typical valuation for a pre-revenue blockchain company. I know of one that has a $150 million valuation in their pre-revenue.
Okay.
So like, it could be very high, or it could be like, you know, $4 million.
What aspects should investors focus on when evaluating investment in blockchain companies?
The ability to use the product is probably unparalleled. So if you can't use it, you can't understand it, that is a very big red flag. But that sort of goes for any sort of investment. Yeah, in blockchain, there's a lot of pre-product like companies, and in general, if you don't have the subject matter expertise to evaluate them, I would recommend you don't invest in them unless you're willing to lose the money. Like if you don't mind losing money, then I say go for it, because if you're right, it'd be crazy.
All right. What is the main difference between Ethereum and the graphene blockchain? Is one better than the other for application development?
I'm going to skip. I have never heard of the graphene blockchain.
Okay. What is the route to exit with blockchain startups? Any like IPO?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the blockchain startup, right? So there's that spectrum that I told you, where on one side you have like this extremely liquid market of tokens that is running 24/7. And then on the other, you have a traditional equity, corporation that you've got to, do tender offers to get any sort of liquidity for founders or early investors, or you have to wait until IPO or whatever. And there's companies that exist all along that spectrum, right? So like you can think of, FTX as a company that's a traditional equity company that is, gonna probably IPO.
I heard NFTs being mentioned earlier. I would like to know your personal opinion on the space.
NFTs are cool. There exists a decent sized risk with NFTs that is not really being addressed by anyone as far as I can see. And that is, sorry, and that is the media behind NFTs is often hosted in a centralized place. And what that means is that someone can just pull down their web server and your NFTs don't have the image anymore, or the audio or the media generally.
Good point. Very good point. Last question. Could you display the original website with the investment packages between 9 and 2000? And I will say somehow, while you're bringing that up, are you going to bring it up?
I'm not going to bring it up because those are not investment packages. Those are
They're not.
Those are planned for developers. So if you are writing blockchain software, you would pay my company somewhere between 9 and 2000. We do not accept money for equity between $9 and 2000.
Yeah, because I'll be putting, yeah. What about IPFS, or are we for file storage?
Yeah, IPFS is not horrible, but not all NFT projects use IPFS or Arweave.
So we finished on 6 on the dot somehow. I really enjoyed this talk. I think you've given us a significant amount to think about. The good news for everybody is that we record the session. We're going to put it up on our website, so you can go back and take a look at some of those sites and some of the information that Auston gave us. Auston, thank you so much for spending the time. I'm sure if we had the same talk in a couple of months, the landscape would have shifted again. You got a couple of people asking for your contact info. If
yes, I'll put it in the chat right now.
Maybe your Twitter handle, so they can add you to their short list of knowledgeable people to follow. And again, thank you for your time, and thank you all for tuning in, and hope everyone has a great evening.
Cool. Thank you.
I'm not going to start. Did you put it in there? All right. I didn't want to stop the talk. So Auston at quicknote.io and at Bunsen. For anyone
no problem.
Contact info.
I'll answer these last 2 questions before we go, if you want.
Sure.
What are the key components of a startup that you look for? I like people that know a lot about what they're doing. And I like people that are focused on users or customers. So for instance, I recently invested in a company called, oh my God, I'm gonna die for not knowing this.
How many companies are you investing in?
I think 12 or 13 now. Tenably is the name of the company. And the founder of this company was doing American Disability Association accessibility work for several years before he decided he thinks that there's an opportunity to automate the entire thing. And so, I saw that and I was like, this is great. This person knows the space. They have the connections, and they are passionate about it, and they want to service customers. So when I see all that, that's like enough. Sometimes I have to help reorient people's minds around, like, you don't necessarily need investment, you need customers. But if I have some combination of like subject matter expertise, passion for the customer, passion for a problem, and generalist expertise, then I will try to invest. Can we invest in QuickNote? Not at the moment. We'll see what happens there.
Everyone stay tuned for that. And we're going to, for Black Angels Miami, before everyone leaves, we're going to have a real exciting pitch nights coming up for Pitch Plus, and look out for news on that. And we may have to, with all these questions, we may have to have a follow up in the near future to catch up on all of the happenings in this space. Um, so, all right, we're over. No more questions. I think everyone's happy there. Thank you again, Auston, and hope everyone has a great evening.
Thank you. Talk to you later.